This is Professor Bright, and I am here in this video to give you an overview of what professional problems look like in UmpTyUmp. So I explained this a little bit previously. However, the main question is, well, what are they? And the way I think of them is that I think of them as an essay that involves mathematics. And an essay, you have a lot of explanation, so there should be a fair amount of explanation that accompanies the mathematics to a given problem. Okay? Granted, here you're not going to do all the mathematics, but you're going to show a fair chunk of mathematics. Okay? Each week, you're going to be given one professional problem in addition to your homework, and each professional problem is going to be worth 8 points. Those 8 points are going to consist of 5 points for the correctness of mathematics. Okay, so bulk of the points still related to actually doing the math. Okay. The remaining points, 3 points, are going to be for writing, and that's what this video series is aiming to do, is to develop those writing skills at a gradual pace rather than all at once. And I would also note that there is 1 point of extra credit available, so it could actually be 4 points for writing, but that fourth point is going to be very, very hard to obtain. Okay? I want you to think of a scenario where you produce a work of mathematics that would literally be hung in a museum. It is beautiful and revolutionary, so that's the level that a 4 would have to be at. Okay? So if you get a 3 on writing, you're doing just great. Okay? I would also mention that there is a rubric that details what is a 4, 5, 3, 2, 1 on math and a 3, 2, 1 on writing. That rubric is available on Moodle. Feel free to refer to it. Just know that what the writing part is going to vary a little bit in expectations as it is, or from what is posted. Okay, next I just wanted to give you some examples. If you're at back to school night, I did show these examples. If you weren't, we'll just kind of run through them quick. First example here, you can see that the student got a very low score on math and a very low score on writing. Okay, so not the best work, but what you can see is that they actually didn't include any writing. Okay, the bold font writing is what the instructor provided back as feedback. But yeah, they didn't include any writing, so if you don't include any writing, you're going to get a 0 on the writing part. And then their mathematics, they had actually several mistakes, so they got deducted quite heavily on the math part. Okay. Next example, okay, math is still, very weak. There's several errors or several or maybe a few big errors, and so that's why they got deducted on math. The writing, though, it's improving. So you'll notice that they included the original problem rewritten, okay, and then they had some statements here kind of explaining why they produced what they produced, and then arrived at the answer, or their answer rather. Okay, just continuing with some other examples here. Okay, so this time the math is fully supplied and fully correct. Okay, but their writing, they have different reasons why they got deducted on writing. First of all, they have what looks like scribbles. Okay, they meant to exclude this, but they included it. Okay, and also if you look on the left side, the instructor left a comment that it's hard to follow. Okay, so that doesn't mean it. That means it's not explained that well. Okay, so be cognizant of that. On the last example here, this is kind of what we're shooting for eventually. You may not get this the first time around or even the second, but you can see, okay, the original problem is there, and then they have graphs as needed, and then they've included mathematics as completely correct this time, and explanations of how they got there. Okay, so this is what we're shooting for. We'll get there eventually, but in the meantime, we're going to kind of build this up in stages. Okay, so now, okay, you're probably thinking, how do I produce that? Okay, well, first of all, I need to reinforce that you need to have a solid understanding of the math, right? Because that's 5 points. of the 8 points. Okay, so you need to make sure that the math is correct and that your understanding of the mathematics is correct. Okay, then after this, well, maybe along the way rather, I would encourage you to keep track of all of your work, because you're going to have to explain it. And so maybe you need to remind yourself, when you go back and start writing, maybe you need to remind yourself of the details of the theorems that you used, any assumptions or conditions that were underlying the problem. Okay, you need to mention those in your write-up because it's important for the reader to know how you got from point A to point B. Okay, and lastly, I want to reassure you that the writing expectations are going to be developed with time. Okay, so producing that 8 quality right away may not happen, and that is perfectly okay. We're going to get there, it's just going to maybe take some time. Okay, and lastly, I would encourage you to get feedback often. The instructor, so Professor Kinnan and myself, will not read your professional problems in advance. Okay, so if you send them to us by email or bring it to us at a homework help session, we're not going to read through the entire thing. We'd be doing that for all the students. But what we can do is we can offer advice. So if you have a particular piece that you're working on in your professional problem and you want some feedback on that, like, am I wording this correctly? Did I get this part right? We can give you feedback on that most certainly. Another thing I would encourage you to do is to have peers review your solution or your professional problem, right? Get feedback from another student. Say, you know what, do you understand this? Am I missing anything here? You could even ask an older student or maybe even a parent or a teacher and just kind of see if they understand what you're saying, okay? So some things to keep in mind. Other things that are kind of important to this, I'm going to tell you this is the first time we're doing this, and we're only doing this at the Rochester site, okay? So give us feedback, and then in particular Duluth and the Twin Cities, they're not doing this process yet. They might adopt it based on our findings and how the procedure goes. And as a result, I want you to be wary of differing expectations that are being communicated. Okay, so if you're on Moodle, there might be some information that's communicated on Moodle that maybe doesn't apply to us, like they're expecting a certain format or they're expecting certain pieces of writing style to have developed. We're going to take this very gradually and we're not going to follow that necessarily. So just make sure to review the videos, ask questions if you do have any questions about expectations, and we'll get this all ironed out. Okay, that writing grade, okay, remember it's 3 points for writing, that is going to be graded each week based on acquired knowledge so far. Okay, the math, that you're kind of stuck with that. That's still going to be 5 points, but the writing part is going to be based on what we know so far. So for example, if you submit week 3's professional problem, okay, that's going to be graded based on week 1, week 2, and week 3. Okay, so any expectations that we've developed in weeks 1, 2, and 3, you should use those in writing your professional problem. Okay. Lastly, I want to remind everybody that writing is a process. Okay, it's not going to be crystal clear right at the beginning. Expectations are going to evolve. We might say something in week 3, right? So we might have an expectation here that is in contradiction of an expectation we set in week 1. Okay, but if that is the case, what I want you to do is go with the most recent material, because we're learning over time and we're adapting our habits. Okay, so go with the most recent expectation in lieu of any other, or in lieu of the previous expectations. Okay, and that's the end of this first video. Look for